Welcome to Engage Your Tribe, a podcast about the art and science of audience engagement. I'm Jeremy Shear, and my guest today is Sabrina Zahn, Senior VP of Marketing at Flash. Sabrina, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. I'm excited to be here.
Engage Your Tribe is brought to you by Tribal Knowledge Podcasting. We're a full-service B2B podcasting agency that helps brands use podcasting as a fun and efficient way to have authentic, non-sales type conversations with the buyers and decision makers you need to get to know to grow your business. You can learn more at tribknowledge.com. Okay, Sabrina, so back to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background as a marketer and about Flash.
Sure. So the best way I can describe myself is I am a beautiful little mix of storyteller and data nerd. And that's perfect for my background in digital and integrated marketing. I launched my digital career working on consumer brands and campaigns during my time at NBC Universal, InStyle.com, AOL, and other media brands out of New York City. And then I spent the last 12 years in the B2B space, and I was focusing on marketing hardware, software, technology solutions to some of the Fortune 100. And that was during my time at LinkedIn and then here in software startups in Austin, Texas. So I've been having a good time bridging the gap between consumer and B2B. And at Flash, I've got the privilege of building a brand new mobility category, and we're calling that the Mobility Hub Operating System. And we are really well positioned there because we have a proprietary cloud-based solution called Flash OS. So over the last 18 months at Flash, we've gone through an extensive series of mergers, acquisitions, and one of my key imperatives is to bring together all of those brands and technologies into a unified story. And that, again, is exclusive to our category and building off of our product, Flash OS, the Mobility Hub Operating System, which is fun because, again, I get the opportunity to transform this company that was previously focused on marketing B2B cloud mobility solutions to complete end-to-end B2B to C solution. So now we can communicate directly with the end user, who is the parker or the driver.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And a great, sounds like a great opportunity for a marketer, especially one with your experience to take on a really interesting challenge.
Definitely very meaty, and it's dipping into all the experiences that I've had in the past. So love bringing out the data, love bringing out the brand and the creative, and, again, balancing the art and science.
Balancing the art and science, exactly. So now I know that you guys have invested a lot of time and a lot of resources into doing original customer research. So
Yes.
Just describe the research. Tell us about the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done actually a number of research projects, and as we have different audiences now and across different verticals, we're spending a lot more time digging into proprietary research, first-party research, and then also looking at third-party data sources as well. But one of the first projects was a proprietary first-party research on the consumer that we titled The Modern Parker. And the reason we went out and learned a little bit more about the modern parker is because the parker or the driver of today is very different than the person pre-pandemic. If you think about what your experience was pre-pandemic, you would circle around blocks. It's a very stressful experience. You're trying to figure out where to grab that ticket. Where do you cash it in? Where do you pay? Do you have enough cash on you? And now that we are, still in the pandemic and hopefully, looking at the light at the end of the tunnel soon, we've realized, and what we saw was our customers and the consumers, the parkers, the drivers, telling us they wanted a touchless, integrated mobility experience. And what I mean by touchless is it's not that they're afraid to touch things. That was pretty much the case much at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
It is a completely integrated, seamless, mobility-driven experience. It's a digital experience. They want flexibility. They want their parking and mobility journey to be predictable. They don't want to spend that extra time circling around blocks. And now with the advent of EV charging and a lot of changes that happen across the supply chain and automotive and with automobiles, they're buying more EV cars, and they are looking for EV charging opportunities, and they want more services like that are integrated into a completely digital, mobile first experience, and they will be paying a premium for it. They volunteer, raise their hand, say, if it makes it my life easier, I'm willing to prefer a particular location and pay a
Yeah.
premium for that. And what's interesting about that, tying back the B2B and B2C, is this impacts how we explain our solutions and our services back to our B2B buyers. These are
Mm.
the owners, the operators of buildings and parking garages, parking decks, lots, stadiums, healthcare facilities, universities, everywhere that you have to go and bring your vehicle. That
Hmm.
impacts all of them. And each one of them have a very different use case back with the consumer.
Yeah. Wow. That is really interesting. I know what you mean. Like we recently bought a hybrid plug-in car, first time having it, and then all of a sudden, once you have a car like that, you're like, oh, where can I plug it in? It
Right.
just becomes one of your first, the first things you need to take care of, and you quickly locate. Well, there's a parking garage that has a station and all that. So this is absolutely the time, right, to get into that business for sure. It just as more and more people are going to be buying electric cars or some kind of plug-in car for sure.
Exactly. So there's a lot of re-education that goes
Yeah.
with all of it, because not just on the consumer side, they're learning how to use this vehicle. It's not the typical mentality of, an internal combustion engine where you go and you fill up. It's
Yeah.
more akin to your phone. So you see a battery running low, you try to plug that thing in and get a little juice everywhere you can. And that's
Yeah.
also very similar to the EV mentality. And so when you've got these amazing structures that are the intersection of mobility, electricity, services. They're poised perfectly to take advantage of that massive change.
Hmm. Okay, so it sounds like obviously doing this research gave you some really valuable insights into consumer behavior. How did you do the research? How did you get this data?
Sure. So it was first party data. So we worked with a firm locally here in Austin, and we were able to identify different segments. So we ended up with three different segments, and one of them was our high target segment in terms of those are the right type of consumers that we see utilizing the types of services that we have to offer. And they actually were the majority of the people that responded in the survey. And so that really gave us a lot of confidence and credence that we were on the right track for
Hmm.
a digitally driven, completely mobile, cloud first, and integrated experience. I know I've said a lot of buzzwords there, but that's the massive change and that new category that we're establishing within parking and mobility.
Hmm. Was there anything in the research that you found like particularly surprising? Because what you've described sounds really valuable, but not like super shocking that people would want this kind of experience. Was there anything that you were like, huh, no, never would have guessed that?
So there weren't a lot of surprises. It was more validation. It was
Okay.
validation of that massive change that was happening. It was, people are done with the experience of yore. They're more experience. Their experience is demanding that modern, completely integrated one. And the pandemic really accelerated a lot of that change. When you think about even now, when we go to grocery stores, everything's curbside. It's planned. It's on your phone. You go out to eat, you're scanning a QR code. So QR code boom was massive in terms of
Yeah.
helping to accelerate that digitized experience on the consumer side. But what this also does, what it also did was it gave us a lot of um, uh, confidence and trust that that's part of the things that we need to educate our B2B buyers on. This was the first time from the B2B side, the owners and the operators of all of those different types of buildings and facilities, parking lots and garages. This was the first time that industry was really rocked um, through the pandemic. It was
Hmm.
traditionally considered recession proof. People always had to go somewhere. They always had to go to work. They always had to pay for parking, and it was quite insulated. And this was the first time no one was traveling anywhere.
Yeah.
for an extensive amount of time. It wasn't the 2 weeks, we shut down, we move on with our lives. This is now going into year three of this
Yeah.
massive change. We aren't who we were back in 2019. And
Yeah.
so what was important to that was also we realized, okay, we need to take a better look at the B2B side because there's a
Yeah.
lot of evangelizing and education of the change that happens on the consumer. And these are the people that are interacting with the technology, the software, and the hardware at these facilities and locations. So we needed to help understand on the B2B side, well, are we recovering? Are people back? What does that look like? And
Hmm.
no one has ever done any kind of research like that within the parking and mobility industry. And so we took another turn with the research screw, and we worked and partnered with the National Parking Association and Ernst and Young to develop a new series of quarterly reports and a standardized metric that can predict, are we in a recovery as an industry, parking and
Mm.
mobility, so that we can start to give ourselves a benchmark every quarter. What's changing? Are we getting better? And we looked at this in Q4, and we wanted to understand what was the impact of the pandemic on that industry, and you know, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? And in Q4, we wanted to answer that question: Are we in recovery? And to our dismay, and this was again validation of a lot of anecdotal data and just
Hmm.
what we were seeing is no, we weren't. And
Mm.
what was important to understand is that when we were looking at the cuts of data in a more verticalized fashion, we were seeing people were traveling. They're on planes again. They're going on vacations. They're staying at hotels. They were attending concerts and events. People are back. They're moving around. They're doing things. But the parking industry was heavily reliant on commuter and day-to-day parkers
Mm.
going to work.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we found both in the consumer data and then it was reflected back to us again in the road to recovery was that people want flexibility. They're not going back to the
Mm.
office every single day.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll go in 2 days a week. Maybe they'll go in 3 days a week. Maybe they're not going to stay the whole day. Their length of time is going from 8 to 10 hours to 4 to 6 hours, a few days, and they're going to different places. So they're not even committed to that same location. It's a massive shift in life and expectations. And so when we were looking at this data, we started talking to some of the other economists out there and had a great conversation with an economist over at USA Today who believed that this could even be one of the key leading indicators of whether the economy is in recovery yet as well, because
Mm.
people were spending their money in certain places, but they're not traveling and adopting again, the behaviors of 2019. We're a different society right now.
Wow. So if you're in the parking industry, this data is got to be hugely helpful, right? I mean, and again, it's validation. I'm sure these folks have been monitoring this as best they can and probably getting a pretty good sense that, like, okay, we're being massively disrupted here, but to actually have the hard data has got to be really helpful. So now, how does this help you as a marketer, having this kind of validation of what everyone kind of thought was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what this does is allows for improved specificity. When we're looking at each vertical, like I said before, there are so many verticals, so many types of facilities that we're talking to, and there's different decision makers and influencers at each one of those facilities. So, when you think about someone who is managing a really fancy downtown condo, their expectations of what that mobility and parking experience is like is very different than someone who is managing a healthcare facility or a major hospital. Their patients and their end consumers are very different and they want a different type of solution. They have a different pain point that we need to solve. And so, what that allows us to do as marketers, and for me specifically, is that improved specificity on the message and the communication and the value that we're able to offer both to the consumer and back to the owner, who or the operator of that particular location who's buying our products and services and technologies. Um, what we want is for when people see our communications, they read it, they see our creative, they attend any of our events or branded experiences, we want them to walk away and feel like they were seen,
Mm,
that we understand, we're communicating in their language, we understand the pain point that they're trying to solve or the pain that they're experiencing as the consumer. We want them to take away the fact that we are their partner in improving the mobility experiences in their lives and the parking and the mobility experiences in their business. So this just allows that idea of, verticalized communication to be that much more pointed for us.
hmm. And I would think too that it just lends way more authority to any claims you make, that you can back them up with data.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so, you know, we can look anecdotally and hear feedback from what people see, what they experience. I mean, even just as consumers, you and I can talk about, oh, how parking is such a pain. That's a universal. It's understood and
Yeah.
accepted. Um, but when we hear the data from people, when we ask different kinds of questions, that gives that confidence and credence back to, yeah, we're on the right track. um, you know, be willing to take that leap.
hmm hmm. And I mean, talk about thought leadership too. I mean, I think you were kind of already talking about it when you're talking about being a partner, right?
Yeah.
The reason a company would want to partner with you, they say, well, these people actually know what they're talking about. They even maybe know more than we do about parking in a certain way because they did this study. And that's the kind of, I mean, that's real thought leadership. It doesn't get any more fundamental than we learned a whole bunch of new stuff because we did a survey or we actually did a study. Now we've brought new knowledge into the world. But I think that's the best kind of thought leadership.
I completely agree. And I think it could even add more value when you can share it out with partners in your industry and you
Mm-hmm.
get their feedback. Like, is this ringing
Mm,
true to you? Because for us, we're doing this as an ongoing series. And so
mm.
what we hear from the field, we're combining the qualitative and the quantitative together. So if there is something that's emerging in the field or our customers or our consumers are experiencing it, we want to hear that. We want to integrate that back in so that we can start to monitor for any of those additional types of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a couple quick questions toward the end here. What's been your main focus so far in Q1?
Yeah. So, great question. For Q1, that's our biggest, as a marketing team, that's our biggest quarter of every year. And this year, because we went through a series of mergers, acquisitions, and true transformation and growth from our company, I joined right before the pandemic, which is a great time to join a mobility startup. We went from having around 100 employees to now, I think we're pushing 700, and that was
Wow.
during the pandemic. So a lot of
Mm,
strategic moves, but then also rapid hiring. And so
mm,
as a team, one of our key imperatives for Q1 is launching that unified platform story. We're building that category, the unified, mobility hub operating system. We've got our proprietary solution, Flash OS, Flash operating system, and so it's going to be pretty key for us as a team to launch our unified platform story. And the way that we're doing that is leveraging all of our digital channels. Every performance and digital marketer will tap into, their typical playbook on how to launch a new product. But what we're doing is we're also adding some emphasis on experiential events for both the consumer and the customer. And that's the owner and the operator audience segment, because we've got so many
hmm.
new things to bring to market that education is so critically important.
Yeah.
And the best way to do it is, if people are willing to start getting together for events, now's the time to get them to experience that change and also validate that that's the change that we're adopting and we're educating on.
Yeah. Okay. Very exciting. Great opportunities there for sure.
Yeah.
So now, what are the top three KPIs that your boss keeps a close eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the top three that we are looking at is obviously new consumers acquired. We want to make sure that the technology is doing what we are claiming it's going to do. So we actively monitor on a daily basis, looking at all of our different cities. What's the adoption and what are the new consumers that we are acquiring? So consumer acquisition is key. That's on the direct, the D2C side. When we're talking about the business to business owner operator audience segment, it is really about leads, particularly sales qualified leads. We want to make sure that we are helping to support the growth of our business overall. And so that translates into a third metric, which is pipeline. So as a team, we're not only telling the brand story, the category story, but we're also driving it through demand generation, growth marketing, life cycle, targeting, and contribution to pipeline.
Okay, excellent. And finally, what do you and your team hope to accomplish throughout 2022?
Yeah, so like I said before, the biggest thing that we want to do this year is drive the adoption of our unified platform. And if we can have our customers, our owner operators who are managing these facilities, the buildings, the lots, the garages, the hotels, the education centers, if we can get them to come away with the fact that we are the digital choice for a completely seamless experience, that makes it easier for them to run their businesses, allows them to drive more operational efficiency, gives back to their consumers in a way that makes their location preferred, then we will have hit that really, that really big rock. And by doing so, it's education, it's elevated brand awareness across all of these different audience segments and these different verticals. Because if we do our jobs right and we tell that unified platform story that is relevant, again, the consumer or the B2B buyer feels seen in how we're communicating that value, eventually all boats rise and we're able to hit those really aggressive goals.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys are well on your way to being a really dominant player in this market, which is incredible. And it sounds like the future of parking is in good hands. Parking's about to get a lot better because it really sucks most of the time.
we do like to say there is a little there's some sexiness to parking, especially when you integrate the digital aspect to it.
Well, it's funny, like parking is such a chore, like it's one of these necessary evils. But when you find the perfect parking space, you're like, yes. It's such a good feeling. You feel like you've conquered, like won a battle or something,
It really is true. It's true. And you tell everybody, oh, I got the spot right there in the front.
It becomes a story. You're like, did I tell you about this parking space I found? Oh boy. Okay. Everyone be quiet. I got to tell you about this parking.
I have a really great parking story about that, finding street parking. And in Austin, so I'm originally from the New York City area. And so, I'm very adept to, getting into those really tight, teeny-weeny New York City spaces. And so I was circling around one night, having to go to an event a couple of years ago here in Austin. And I found this really tiny spot. And I was like, I am determined to get into this spot. So I must have cut that wheel, I don't even know how many times. And I got out, admired my work, and I saw that there was an entire window full of people at the next restaurant watching me. And they were all giving me the thumbs up, and they were like, you did great.
Were they like betting? There was like a lot of action on, can she do it? I got 100 says she can do it.
Yeah, exactly. But it was amazing. And I was like, oh wow, I had an audience.
It's pretty dramatic. It's everyone gets it. Everyone gets it. Like, there's no way she's getting in that space. Oh yeah, she will. Check it out.
Yeah, it was. Oh
my God,
it was a good moment, and made for a great parking story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sabrina, thank you so much. Thanks for that story, for all your great insights, and congrats on the great growth with Flash. Really exciting, and thank you for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. This is great, and I'm very happy to share our story.